want to show this first actually. This is Indonesia compared to Russia. It's like 3/4 Russia actually. It's not as big as Russia.
But 3/4 of Russia is big.
Well, yeah, I mean like it's not like 100% the same size as Russia.
If you
How do you play the fucking
Like what?
Okay, finally. Yeah.
if you count the sea,
So it's that big?
Yeah, it's that big.
So that's the distortions of the map that make it look really small.
Yeah, in the map, the more northern or the more southern it is,
Yeah.
the bigger it becomes, and the more to the center, the more smaller it becomes. That's why Indonesia looks like very small,
You see
even though
my
it's like very
No, but
big.
like Papua New Guinea is.
No, this is another country.
Um,
Like it ends here, so I told you it's like 3/4.
okay.
Okay, so who the hell invented the name Indonesia? It's actually not an Indonesian. The name Indonesia was invented by two British guys. The first one a cartographer, the second one a lawyer. I don't know why he involved himself in this. Which is a bit strange, right? Like I think the name Russia is invented by Russians, not like by Germans, for example.
Like Mandarin is invented by a Portugal diplomat, I think.
Yeah, Mandarin is invented by Portugal, but not the name of the country. Like literally, the name of the country came from a British guy. Anyway, let's continue. So, where did Indonesians came from? This is what was taught to me in my school, that Indonesians originally came from China. Some stay in Indonesia, others went as far to Madagascar, New Zealand, and even Hawaii. So technically we're still the same people. But there's another theory. The other theory said that actually people from Indonesia came from Indonesia, and in fact, people in Japan came from Indonesia. I don't know which one is true, I'm just showing it to you. Okay, so Indonesia is based on two empires basically. The first one is the Sriwijaya Empire. At its peak, it spans from Java to Thailand. And the second empire,
no, after that we control everything.
and the second empire is the Majapahit Empire. Basically, the whole idea of Indonesia is based on these two empires. And then the Dutch Verenigde Oost-Indisch Compagnie came, the Dutch basically. They gone bankrupt. It's a company. Like Indonesia was colonized by a company first. They got rich, then they got bankrupt because everybody tries to steal money instead of working. Then the Netherlands colonized Indonesia. So from like 1800s to 1949, this is basically modern day Indonesia. Then the Japanese came. Then the Japanese was defeated, and the Dutch tried to return, but this happened. And Indonesian independence. Basically, that's the short history of Indonesia. Because if I want to give you the big history, it's going to be like 3 books. So
Wait,
this is like a short history.
What is the year, the beginning of the Indonesian history? You've said like the Dutch.
beginning of Indonesian history is like 20,000 years ago. The first
Yeah.
one I've told you, like
Yeah,
the one,
yeah.
the immigrants from China.
But like the latest one is what, 1,000 years old, or 100 years old?
Indonesia is 74 years old. 73, sorry. Like the modern republic is 73 years old. 1945. One day after Japan got bombed, basically.
And what was before?
Before is the Dutch. Sorry, the Japanese. Before is the Japanese.
So
Because the
all this
Japanese
territory
invaded
was Japanese territory?
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Second World War. I think in Russia they don't really touch the Pacific War. Only like Nazi Germany,
No.
Soviet Union, Nazi Germany, Soviet Union. But in Asia, we never touched the topic of Nazi Germany. So that's why there's so many people cosplaying as Nazis, because they just thought they are cool people. Like, we don't read about Nazis like at all. I think in Thailand there's even a Hitler ice cream or something like that. I don't know, I just read about it. Okay, now this is an interesting thing. The Dutch, when they colonized Indonesia, they also colonized another part of the world, in South America, Suriname. Now, they need workers for those colonies, so they imported people from Indonesia. So people here are basically Indonesians. They are in another part of the world, in the Americas, but they're basically Indonesians.
They speak Indonesian.
They speak the regional language even. I don't even understand. Okay, so this is the Indonesian flag.
Yeah, like Polish.
Yeah,
say that.
there's like 3 other countries with the same flag. Thank you, by the way, for telling this, because that's the next slide.
But what's booty?
So, this is
No.
other countries with similar flags. The first one is Monaco.
Really?
Yeah. The second one is Singapore.
Yes.
The third one is Poland.
What's the difference between Monaco and Indonesia.
The Monaco flag is a square. The Indonesian one is like a longer square,
Mhm.
something like that. That's technical anyway.
But yeah.
Okay, this is the Indonesian national emblem. Actually, when I first arrived in Russia, like the immigration guys said that why does it look like the Russian one? Well, I don't know. Yeah, for some reason they say why does it look like a Russian one? I don't know. Just ask me. Okay, so basically this Indonesia national ideology Pancasila, national motto different but one, 6 state religion Islam, Protestant Christianity, Catholicism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Confucianism, and currency rupiah. $1 US is 14,540 rupiahs. 1 ruble is 219 rupiah. Now I know why I look like that. That's the next slide. So
Wait, is that like the
Wait a second.
rules and all of that? Is that just from the World War II?
yeah, like 50 years ago, there's like a hyperinflation in Indonesia, just like what happened in Russia in the 90s. So every single currency have an extra 3 zeros.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they never reduce the zeros like in Russia. So that's why this still happened even 50 years after.
I mean, like the ideology and all of that is just from the World War II or just from before?
No, this is after World War II. Like
Mhm.
everything was basically created in like 1 or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
There's a video, which would be a problem because I have to access the video somehow. How?
Just go back to the home and go to the right. Go to the right. No, go to the right. And then yeah, file.
Okay. It's made with the government, so that's why it's so much. That's why we know it's made with the government.
Very good.
Can I take a photo?
Okay, wait. I think I can.
No, this one.
Okay, just play it and pause it. Which one?
No, like you're
Okay.
stand leaning on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the presentation again. Okay, that's the video. Now they emphasize on be positive, right? Why? Because like this year, this report came out. Basically, it said that Indonesia is the happiest, most optimistic country. For a lot of people in Indonesia, they receive this news with a bit of sarcasm. You know, Indonesians laugh at everything, even the bad news, so that's why Indonesia is the happiest country. Also, the next thing is that Indonesia is named the world's most generous nation. It's good, but also there's a negative part. There's a whole underground industry of people pretending to be beggars to beg money, and they actually managed to get enough money to buy an Alphard and 2 houses. So yeah, Indonesia is very generous. That's why. Just be a beggar, you can buy an Alphard.
What's good?
Okay, this is my thing. Indonesia is the 4th most populous country in the world after the United States. 265 million people.
Wow.
well, it's already in the video. Indonesia has more than 1,000 ethnicities and more than 700 languages. It's a miracle actually how this remains one country. It's also the biggest Muslim country in the world, but it's divided like this. Like some parts are majority Muslim, other parts majority Protestant, other parts majority Catholic. So it's not like one region and everything is Muslim. That's one thing that a lot of people don't know. Indonesia is also the world's third biggest democracy. This is for the presidential elections next year. Number one is the incumbent, second one is from the opposition. Thank you very much for the joke. Anyway, actually in Indonesia, I think we took elections way too seriously. There are couples who are actually fighting because of the elections, like the husband choose number one, the wife choose number two, and they are actually fighting. In another case, there's people who actually stabbed each other because of this. So I think it's way too democratic, but that's just my opinion. Okay, Indonesia is also one of the biggest economies of the world. Nowadays, it's the 16th largest. By 2030, it's predicted to be the 7th largest economy in the world. And by 2050, Indonesia is predicted to become the 4th largest economy in the world. So the first one will be China, second the United States, third India, and the fourth one will be Indonesia.
He said it was good and then went away. Good. Okay.
Okay, now fun facts. You were asking about money, right? See, in Indonesia, this extra 3 zeros does not matter at all. Actually, this is 2 rupiahs, basically. Yeah, but because of that history I've told you, every single money have an extra 3 zeros. Which complicates, when you're counting money, like there's way too many zeros. So there's some people thinking that, why can't we just cut the number of zeros to become like this? But I don't know. Maybe when I return to Indonesia, the money will look like this. Nobody knows. Another thing about Indonesia. Indonesia is one of countries in the world where big hurricanes are literally scientifically impossible. Like it's impossible for a big hurricane to happen in Indonesia because something called the Coriolis effect. You see, the earth rotates. But the interesting thing is, because Indonesia is located just in the middle, winds from the north could never meet the winds from the south. See? Like there's no movement here.
No.
Because the winds can't meet, there is no possibility of hurricanes in Indonesia. But there's a huge possibility of earthquakes and volcano eruptions. This is all earthquakes in Indonesia from 1973 to 2013.
Is it dangerous?
Not really, maybe like every 5 years or so, but it's random. Like it's not always here, sometimes it's here, sometimes it's here. It's like tossing a coin. Like if you're lucky, there's not many big. Okay, this is an interesting story as well. So, in the 17th century, the British exchanged an island in Indonesia. No, sorry, not the British, the Dutch. The Dutch exchanged an island in Indonesia with Manhattan. Like the Dutch owned Manhattan, and the British owned this island in Indonesia. It's called Brun Island. And the Dutch have Manhattan. So basically the Dutch came to the British and said, can we just exchange these islands? I give you Manhattan. Basically that's what the Dutch said. And the British got Brun Island. Now, why does the British do this? Because Brun Island at the time have a lot of spices. Back then in Europe, they priced these spices in their weight with gold. Like if you got 1 kilogram of spices in Indonesia, you can sell it for 1 kilogram of gold. So that's why. Oh, and by the way, about presidents. Indonesia is one of the only countries in the world that have elected not only a woman president, but also a disabled person as president. He is blind.
Mhm.
And actually he always make a joke about it. Like,
He's what?
blind.
Ah, oh, nice.
Yeah. So he always make a joke like, what's wrong with you guys? Why do you choose a blind guy as president? Every time. Every time he's doing a speech, he always ended with like, what's wrong with you guys? Why do you choose a blind guy as president?
But he's now president.
No, he already died. Like this happened in 2003. 2002, 2003.
And what about her?
She's still a powerful political figure, but people I think is a bit sick of seeing her, so she's just doing the job behind the scenes. Okay, this is another interesting thing. So in Indonesia, there is actually an absolute monarchy. in one of the provinces of Indonesia, the Sultan of Jogja, this person, His Majesty the Sultan of Jogja, he still rules his region as an absolute monarch, but under the Republic of Indonesia. And even their guards still use traditional costumes. Like they don't use like tux and tie, they still use traditional costumes like this. Even when it's about guarding against drones, they still have to use the traditional costume. Like this is the drone jammer, this is a drone jammer, but this is their costume. Like they're still using the traditional costume, even when they're using a modern thing. This is the Instagram account of Jogja's princess. Yeah, I just screenshot it. Okay, now crazes of Indonesia and Russia. So Indonesia and Russia initially is pretty close, from the 1950s to 1965 close. Like, you know, this kind of close. And actually, there's the, how should I put it? There's a trace in Saint Petersburg. So I think all of you know this building.
Right.
Yeah. During the Soviet era, this building was initially used as a warehouse. It's a mosque, but it was used as a warehouse initially, until Khrushchev's time.
What is it?
The Saint Petersburg Mosque, it's in Garkovskaya.
And what is that?
Gorkovskaya.
You have church and then Muslim has the
Yeah, but what is that?
Gorkovskaya.
Gorokovskaya.
the one before you
The blue one.
Like the west.
Ah, that's nice.
Have you been to Petropavlovskaya, by the way?
Petrogradskaya.
Petropavlovskaya, I mean the fort. Okay.
I don't want to go there. Can people go inside, right?
I think you can, yeah.
You can.
Okay, anyway, like this. In the Soviet era, this building used to be used as a warehouse. Like, not as a
For
place
what?
of worship.
For
I don't know.
oh, for Soviet stuff.
Yeah, for Soviet stuff, basically. Who knows what it
Could
is?
we pause you for a second? Gurzat, can you tell us about how you can come in? What rules are there? And how you can come in into?
For men, it's not so hard. You can just ask. Only on Friday there are special pray, but in other days you can ask the people who are there, and they will enter you.
Because like there are guards against us.
No, there's no gods.
Like they
It's just like people working in
Yes,
there.
so
Where
there's
sometimes
no-
there's police there.
No,
Sometimes. Yeah. Okay, anyway, like, let me continue. So this building used to be used as a warehouse in Soviet times. And until Khrushchev's time. Now the story that a lot of people don't know is why Khrushchev decided to turn this building again from a warehouse to a mosque. So, according to the story, Sukarno, Indonesia's first president, he went to St. Petersburg together with Khrushchev. And in Khrushchev's limousine, Khrushchev asked something like, "So, what do you think about St. Petersburg? Leningrad, sorry." And he said something like, "It's beautiful, but I want to go inside this building." Well, it's a warehouse, you can enter it. So Khrushchev received the code, and he returned the building to the Muslim Authority of the Soviet Union, something like that. So it was turned back to a mosque.
what does mean warehouse?
Sklad. Tak sklad is pojmoc.
Okay. Okay. Now, about Russia and Indonesia, there's more. First of all, do you know what is this?
Stadium?
Yeah, it's a stadium, I mean like the name. And like where it is. No, it's Luzhniki in Moscow.
Oh.
Yeah, it's Luzhniki in Moscow. Yeah. Indonesia's national stadium is an almost exact copy of Luzhniki. Well, Luzhniki have been modernized, but Indonesia's one was declared like a cultural heritage site or something like that. So it cannot be renovated if it will change its appearance. But this building is an almost exact copy, basically, of Luzhniki.
What?
Indonesia's national stadium. Like this.
Yeah, but why? I mean, like
Because the architects are from the Soviet Union, the funding are from the Soviet Union, and Indonesia's first president are basically astonished with Luzhniki and asked a stadium like that to be built in Jakarta. So that's why it's an almost exact copy. There's also this statue, I'm sorry I can't get a better picture of it. This is a picture of a farmer and his mother, something like that. But the farmer holds a gun because this is the communist thing, the army of peasants. And also there's this hospital. This is one of the top hospitals in Indonesia for respiratory problems. This is the old building, though. They built a better building, but when it was created by Soviet architects, it basically looked like this. It hadn't really changed.
Yeah, the first thought I had is
And this
it
is
looks
the
very,
plague.
very Soviet.
This is the plague in the Soviet, in the hospital. I think you can read it. Like this is in Russia, this is in Indonesia. Do you want to read it, or like we can go to the next slide?
Go.
We can go.
Okay. Now, scientists. So, Indonesia actually have a lot of scientists that have contributed a lot to the world, but the thing is, Indonesians have this inferior mentality, so we don't really search about them, we don't really boast about them. So a lot of people, when asked, is there scientists from Indonesia, they will say, no, there isn't. Actually, there's a lot. First of all, Joe Kim-tio. He is the first guy who discovered the amount of chromosomes in the human body, 23. He's the first one who knows that number.
Why he named like Chinese?
Because he is Chinese Indonesian.
Ah, okay.
The next one is Baharudin Yusuf Habibi. So if you ever fly in an airplane and the wing doesn't fall to the ground, you need to thank him because he's the one who invented the formula to calculate the probability of whether a wing will, fall from a plane or not. In German, unfortunately. But now he speaks German, so I'm sure he understands. The next one is Sehat Sutarja. He basically contributed on the establishment of the whole microchip industry. So if you have a laptop, if you have a smartphone, without him, maybe you wouldn't have it. Let's speak about technologies. This is one of the fighter jets that's actually right now developed together with South Korea, a 4.5 generation fighter jet, a stealth jet. And the next one is a stealth missile trimaran. This was developed basically to be stealthy from radars, packed a lot of missile, and just shoot missiles and go back. It's like for guerrilla warfare, but in the seas. Okay, let's talk about food. I'm very hungry.
Alright.
So, according to the 2017 CNN Travel World's Best Food, it basically ranked food in Asia, like which one is the tastiest or not. The top 10, from the top 10, 2 foods came from Indonesia. Well, yeah, there's more food came from Thailand.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm doing a presentation about Indonesia here. And the special food in Indonesia is actually this, tempeh. Tempeh is basically soybeans, fermented, and then made into blocks. And then you can fry it, boil it, whatever. It's basically like a vegan alternative to meat. In Indonesia, it's very popular. And also in Japan too, I've heard. But not in Russia. So yeah, if I want one of these, I have to pay like 1,000 rubles, something like that. Anyways.
For this portion?
No, I mean for one packet. Because they actually have to send it here and it's expensive.
You mean in Russia, not there?
In Russia.
What about there?
In
What is?
Indonesia, it's cheap. It's like 20 rubles in one packet.
Wow.
And this one. This is the instant noodle. This is not a traditional food. But ask any of your friends who came from Africa, chances are they will know this.
They sent to Africa?
Yeah, this is a very popular food even in Africa. And they don't even know there's an Indonesian food. They thought it's an African food. Okay, now clothing. So this is what I'm wearing right now. Yeah, it's called batik. So basically in Indonesia, you don't wear a suit and tie if you're going to like important events. You wear this thing, batik. It's like the formal clothing replacing suit and tie in Indonesia. Which explains why I don't know anything about suit and tie. You have to ask Mawin about it. And it's so popular, by the way, that Nelson Mandela always wear it everywhere he goes. So, in the 90s, Nelson Mandela went to Indonesia for an online movement conference, and every single world leader are given this clothing, batik. Nelson Mandela liked it so much, he always wear it. It's now called Madiba's suit. Madiba is short for Nelson Mandela, it's like his childhood name. So in South Africa, it's very popular. And even for Nelson Mandela, he always wear it every time he meets a world leader. Even Indonesian leaders don't do that. And this is for women. It's called kebaya. Yeah, it looks like that.
Yeah, Pasha, where I can find it?
The dress?
Yeah. Important question, which one? The dress or the girl?
And dress and t-shirt. And shirt.
Batik. Well, for the good one, well, actually in Indonesia you can find it everywhere, but they're not selling the good one. So batik is a bit like suit and tie. Like there's like the good Italian ones, and there's like the cheap copy they sell in H&M. The cheap copies you can find it everywhere, but for the which one?
Left.
Okay, but for the good ones, you need to go to Yogyakarta, the place which have the Sultan there. They sell the very good ones, and it's pretty expensive because it's just like a suit. Like there's like the handmade, beautiful ones, and the mass-produced ones. And for the girl, by the way, you're asking that. I think most likely she came from somewhere in like Java or Jakarta, something like that. Just register for an exchange and like figure it out yourself. For kebaya, it's much easier to find than batik because, well, except if you want a good one. If you want cheap ones, there's a lot of mass-produced ones.
Good one, of course.
Okay.
And what about, what's better, Italian or Indonesian?
What?
Dress.
I thought you were talking about girls. Sorry, I'm talking to Sultan. It have to be like this. Have to be very specific. Well, I don't know. I'm not judging anything.
Okay.
I can answer.
Okay, so if you're going to Indonesia, where should you go? This is, by the way, the airport terminal in Jakarta.
What is it?
The airport terminal in Jakarta. So this is where to go. Like if you're visiting, where to go. There's a lot of places that even sometimes we don't know because the country is so big. But everybody just come to Bali for some reason. Pro tip: don't go to Bali in June or December. It's full of Australians. It's bad. just go to a better place, a less touristy place. Like for example, the Big Durian. That's Jakarta. Jakarta's nickname is literally the Big Durian. I don't know why. Durian stinks. Like why do they call it Big Durian? But anyway, so Jakarta is a bit like Saint-Petersburg. It has an old city center and a new city center. So this is, you can imagine like the Hermitage part. Nevsky Prospect of Jakarta. That's why there's this old colonial building by the Dutch. But the Dutch is not as rich as Russia, so that's why it's not as beautiful as Hermitage.
By the way, the historical center of Saint Petersburg, no, Netherlands, like Netherlands people, not Dutch. I thought they were the same.
They're the same. Netherlands, Dutch. In
Yeah,
English,
like,
it's
like the Peter the First came to the Dutch, to the Netherlands, to ask for people to build the city.
yeah.
Quite the same.
But no, the South have more money. This is built by company. They don't have a lot of money. Yeah, you can go to the old city center if you want to, if you like old architecture, or you can go to the new city center, which look just like any other metropolis in Asia. Yeah, this is during car-free day. So during car-free day in Jakarta, all cars are banned from going to the main roads. So that's why people can just cycle, jog, whatever in the streets. And this is Jakarta's iconic public transport. So in Jakarta, they don't have MRTs. I mean like subways, metro. They don't have metro in Jakarta because it's too expensive to dig it. So they use buses with their own routes. It's much cheaper and it works better. For Jakarta at least, but they're still building an MRT for some reason.
How often do you have those days like without cars?
Only one day, I think, during Sunday. Like every Sunday, it's a car-free day in Jakarta.
Seriously?
Yeah, but only in the city center, not like in all city.
No, we compare to Pasha.
Actually, even in this place, there's a good place if you want to take photographs. It's Indonesia's national monument. It's located just in the middle of the city. So, this is an interesting story. Sukarno, Indonesia's president, he's an artist. He wants his city to look artful. And every time you're thinking about art, you're thinking about Paris, right? No? Only me?
Paris?
Yeah, well, Paris. Like if you're thinking about Paris,
Paris?
France, Paris. Not parents, Paris. Paris.
Oh, Paris.
Paris. Why in France?
Parrots.
Paris, sorry, my accent. Anyway, like every time you're thinking about art, you're thinking about Paris.
No.
But
You didn't.
only me, okay, only me. Okay. Anyway, let's continue. So Sukarno thinks about Paris, and he thinks about one thing that defines Paris, the Eiffel Tower, right? So he wants his own Eiffel Tower. He created this one.
It looks like fashion phenomenon. In fact.
Yeah, he don't want it to look like an outright copy. So, for a long time in Jakarta, no building is allowed to be higher than this building, just like in Paris. Then they realized it made Jakarta to look too big, like Jakarta is like 100 kilometers wide. So they decided to, okay, you can build big buildings bigger than this building. If you don't like cities, you can go to this place. It's called Raja Ampat. You can even go with this sail ship, but it's quite expensive. I heard it's like 80,000 rubles or something. Not including the price of the plane ticket to go there. And any other thing you want to buy. So yeah, it's quite expensive. It's like an elite touristic area in Indonesia. It's beautiful and it's not as full of people like Bali.
And what about all ship? If I rent ship, for example.
I don't know if you can rent this one because
Not this one, another.
maybe small speedboats like this one, but not like big ones like this.
And I can go there again.
Well, I think you can't drive it for yourself. You need a skipper. I mean, like the driver of the ship,
Yeah.
because you just can't go anywhere you want.
It's very big.
Oh, and by the way, the title, this is basically from a song in Indonesia. It's like an old song in Indonesia. The lyrics is like, they said our land is heaven on earth.
How's it sing it?
I have to sing it? Okay. It's basically, it sounds like this. Orang bilang tanah kita tanah surga, tongkat kayu dan batu jadi tanaman. So basically it means like this. They said our land is heaven on earth. Even if you throw a staff, it will become a tree. If you throw a rock, it will become a tree. That's actually true though, because there are some plants which looks like that. Like, it looks like a rock, but when you bury it, it will actually become a tree.
Let's try it.
Okay, let's to another location. Still in Indonesia, the Ijen Blue Crater. So the lava here looked blue
What's the lava?
Because it's so hot. Or,
because there's sulfur around here. So that's why it became blue.
Is it cold or?
No, it's hot. It's hot. Don't try to put your hand. Don't try to put your hand in there. No, seriously, it's very hot.
There should be a new like boat ship around these blue lavas, like
You'll sweat to death.
for Sultan, like super modern that resist the temperature.
It's small anyway. You need a raft, not a boat like a small one. You need a raft. Or this one, for example, Mount Bromo. This is actually the same place as in the first slide. It's the same location. It's just that this picture is taken when it's already at like 8 o'clock, something like that. So much of the mist have already disappeared. So if you look at your Microsoft background, when there's that mountain, actually under those mist, there's this. It's called the Ocean of Sand in Indonesia. You can go there with a jeep. You can rent a jeep and just drive all around. There's also this. It's in the Komodo National Park. It's near Lombok, near Bali. You can hitch a flight there. And this is one of the most photogenic places, I should say, because a lot of people just stand here and take a picture like they're between two oceans or something. But yeah, it's very beautiful, but it's quite expensive to go there, for me anyway. And there's also this. Indonesia have one of the only mountains in the equator that actually have snow. It's located in Jaya Mountains on the Kartens Pyramid Peak. But this is for the pros, like there's no hotels or anything. There's like helicopters and stuff, but you will have to do all the hard work yourself. It's like climbing the Everest, but 10 times easier. Or, this is still in Bali, but a lot of people don't know about this. This is the Garuda Wisnu Kencana statue. It's taller than Statue of Liberty. And I took this photo from somebody's Instagram. I don't know who, but it looks the coolest. I think it's just been completed like last month or 3 months ago, something like that.
What is it?
The statue or
Yeah,
the
it's a
photo?
statue of a Hindu god.
Mhm.
This is Garuda, and on top of it is Vishnu. I think you know it.
I know.
Yeah. Or you can go to Borobudur Temple. This is the biggest Buddhist temple in the world. But it's pretty hot there and also pretty touristy. And the tickets there is like 10 times the price if you're a foreigner. No, 100 times the price. I don't know why. I asked them why they charge 100 times the price for foreigners. But yeah, it's worth it. Like the landscape around it is very beautiful. Okay, and finally, if you want to go to Indonesia, so actually Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam is planning a joint World Cup nomination. We don't know whether whether this will go or not, but if it goes, you can go into like 4 countries and also watch football. Yeah, I think that's a good deal.
I don't get why Indonesia is green and not red.
Because Vietnam is a communist country.
Uh,
Indonesia, well, let's just say in Indonesia, if people call you a communist, it's an insult.
But like, if you have this World Cup, where will be the final? Ta-da-da.
Yeah, nobody have decided yet. They just decide that we will have this game together, but nobody have decided where will it be, like the finals.
I think
Who
in
paid the
Bangkok.
most?
I think they will just fight among themselves. Like Malaysia wants it, Vietnam wants it, Thailand wants it, Indonesia wants it too. Let's just see, 2034 anyways, still more time. Okay, now, like, you already asked me about this, right? But before we begin speaking Bahasa Indonesia, I need to tell you some things about Bahasa Indonesia. So, in Bahasa Indonesia, there's 2 ways to say it, the formal one and the informal ones. Unlike in Russian, it's very different between each other. Heck, even between provinces, sometimes it's different. Sometimes they have their own language. For example, like this, saya or aku means I, informal Indonesian. But in informal Jakartan Indonesian, it's gua.
We are cool.
Okay. Informal Indonesian, you is kamu. But in informal Jakarta Indonesian, it's lu.
So like you have to learn 2 languages when
It's actually worse than that. It's like 4 languages something. This is Jakartan Indonesian. There's like the eastern version, there's the western version, there's the northern version. Like in Papua, for example, they don't use saya or gua. They use beta.
the fuck.
And also in western Indonesian, for example, if I want to say car in Indonesian, I will say mobil. But western Indonesians, they said it's kereta. Trouble is, in formal Indonesian, kereta means train. So you see if there's some problems here. And also, in Western Indonesian, they use, for example, this word tulang as like brother. The problem is in formal Indonesian, tulang means bones.
Bones?
Yeah. There's a lot of hilarious mistakes that happen again and again. And also like this. This is the more hilarious mistake. So in Jakarta, they always use gua. But in Yogyakarta, it's like 300 kilometers from Jakarta. It's an educational city, lots of universities. They use aku. But in Jakarta, Indonesian, you use aku if you're flirting.
Huh?
If you're flirting.
Okay.
So a lot of people from Jakarta, when they went to Yogyakarta and the girls use aku, they thought like everybody is flirting with them. True story, by the way. So it caused a lot of problems.
But like, do you have a common language?
It's a common language. It's just like different dialects, I should say.
Do you
But-
understand each other?
Yeah, we understand each other, but when they use those kind of words, sometimes we're just like confused.
Okay.
This is some Indonesian words.
Hi.
Is it hi like Japanese or?
No, like hi,
Okay.
like that.
Dia?
Dia. I like dia.
Yeah, because in Indonesian there is no gender, like to say him or her. There's just dia. It's neutral. Like when you want to say, like for example, he's speaking in Indonesia, you can't say like that. You just say dia berbicara. He's speaking, but who's speaking? You need to provide another information. For example, Andi, the name. For example, Andi berbicara. From Andi, you know that it's a male name, so Andi is the one who talks. So in Indonesian, the language is like the reverse Russian. Like in Russian, everything is very clear. In Indonesian, everything is not clear. We use a lot of body languages and like cultural codes to like understand these kind of things. Sometimes even I don't understand.
So is it
So-
like English?
Super common.
Super simple.
It's super simple, but sometimes it's not great when you're trying to convey information accurately. Like in Russian, it's very easy if you want to be very super accurate. In Indonesian, these kind of words rectangular. And also like this, if you want to say like he's speaking, but it's somebody like you know and he knows, you can say it with a word like koyuto or something like that. But in Indonesian, just say like he's speaking. Like you're using like he's speaking. He's speaking.
Mm.
Yeah,
Oh,
you,
yeah.
you just use like body language and also cultural norms. For me, this is hell because it just complicates my life a lot.
But do you have I love you for friends and for like
Yeah.
others?
Or you say the same.
No, it's different. If you use this one for guys, they're going to think you're homo or something. So if you just want to say like I like you, but like friend, not like
I
romantic,
love you like
you just say saya, and this is very interesting. The Indonesian word for like is a Russian swear word,
Which one?
suka.
Saya suka kamu.
You told me, yeah.
Yeah, that's why like when I'm talking when I'm talking with my friends in the metro station, when I want to use that word, he's like, don't say that. Okay.
Have you seen the latest video where the Putin and the Trump are together and Putin says "fakty," like facts, and Trump is like,
Actually, about Russian, the funny thing is about like shield. На русском sheet.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In Indonesian, for us in Russia, the problem is the word like. Because the word like in Russian, like I mean the Indonesian word for like, is a swear word.
which one? Come on.
That one. Begin with an S,
Yeah.
ends with an A. There's a K in the middle.
Suka in Italian means
Right.
sasi, like suck.
Okay.
It's like segmented.
Suck.
Basically the same.
No,
Basically the same.
suka.
Yeah, you told me.
Basically the same. And this is also the thing that confuses a lot of English speakers with Indonesian. So in Indonesian, water is air. Udara, but udara means air. So in Indonesian, water is air, written air. But air in Indonesian is udara.
Udah. Okay. Saya suka kamu.
You'll memorize this, I know. So that's basically it.
How do you say bye-bye?
Well, this is the formal one, like sampai jumpa. People, I think the only people who use these are like in dramas or something. So this is way too formal. Like if you want to say like paka, you just say like dada.
Oh.
Dadah.
Yeah. So thank you very much. In Indonesian, terima kasih.
Thanks. How does it sound in English? Very much.
Oh, and by the way, I have some of like Indonesian drinks. It's basically a ginger drink, but I only have like 3 of them right now.
I can find it near my country, so it gives me
You
a
can
Russian.
open it right now.
Open right now. Well, if you have like water, yes.
I thought it's something sweet.
Yeah, it's like sachet. Like you have to put it there and then put hot water or milk. Just
Oh, okay,
combine.
okay.
You can hide it.
Like try.
You can.
No, it's made of ginger.
I like ginger.
So I don't know. Do you want some games or something? before you give this?
He will go to Indonesia, so you don't need to give him. And give to her.
Okay, let's have a game.
No, right.
To her.
Okay.
No, I'm done because I can find. I mean, I can go to your country easily. So we are
Okay.
here.
Okay.